Hey guys, welcome to the Daily Word Bible Study, a plain and simple, book by book, chapter by chapter, and verse by verse study through the entire Bible. Currently we're in Isaiah chapter 36, and this is going to be the story. It's kind of when you look at the narrative of Isaiah, and then he's going to pause and tell a story. Now we dealt with this story in Kings, dealt with this story in Chronicles. About the Assyrian king who will attempt to invade Judah. Um, my guess, uh, the king is feeling himself because he probably is kind of reeling after his success with um, his success with um, um, what am I going to say? His success with conquering Israel. Okay, he conquers Israel, and um, probably just within the last 10 to 15 years, and he's probably feeling himself. Hey, I conquered Israel, so now. Uh, um, I'm going to go after Judah. Now, what he doesn't acknowledge, of course, is that God gave him the victory. So let's get into it. What I want to do is get into just to kind of quickly show you the timeline again. Um, I like this chart again because it kind of gives us a timeline of how approximate timeline, I should say. So let me go to Isaiah here. All right. So around 701, so 2 Kings 19 and then Isaiah 37. Here's Hezekiah's prayer. This prayer was based on what we're getting ready to get into. And I'm only showing this for the timeline. So again, you see the 700 BC, right? Again, that's just a timeline there. All right, so let's get into it. Sennacherib, okay, if I am pronouncing his name correctly. You know what I'm going to do here? I'm going to do this. Hold on, see. I'm going to get a
Sennacherib.
Sennacherib. Okay, Sennacherib. Okay. All right. Chapter 36, he says, in the 14th year of King Hezekiah. Now, again, let me just show you something here. King Hezekiah, remember, he's right here around 701 BC. So we're just a little over 100 years before the fall of Jerusalem, which happens, where did it happen at? Where did it say? Come on, fall of Jerusalem. Right here, 586. So just a little over what, 100? About 116 years, a little 100 years. So all of these prophecies, by the way, it's gearing towards this fall. So Hezekiah, we're close. All right, that's just a little FYI. Chapter 36, verse 1 says, in the 14th year of King Hezekiah, Sennacherib, king of Assyria, attacked all of the fortified cities of Judah and captured them. And the king of Assyria sent the Rashika along with a massive army from Lachish to King Hezekiah at Jerusalem. The Assyrians stood near the conduit of the upper pool by the road to the fuller's field. Alekiam, son of Hilkiah, who was in charge of the palace, and Shebna, the court secretary, and Joai, son of Asaph, the court historian, came out to him. And Rabshakeh said to him, "Tell Hezekiah, the great king, the king of Assyria, say this: what are you relying on?" Now he's going to give this grandiose, arrogant speech here. As I said, he's really feeling himself. And listen to what he says right here. So he says, "What are you relying on? I say that your strategy and military preparedness are mere words. What are you now relying on that you have rebelled against me? Look, are you trusting in Egypt?" Now remember, a few chapters ago, God rebukes Israel for relying on Egypt, right? He says, look, are you trusting in Egypt, that splintered reed of a staff that will enter and pierce the hand if anyone leans on it? This is how Pharaoh, king of Egypt, is to all who trust in him. Now, remember, God actually always said that too, that the Israelites were so stupid that they would trust in the weakness of Egypt. Verse 7, suppose you say to me, we trust in the Lord our God. Isn't he the one whose high places and altars Hezekiah has removed, saying to Judah and Jerusalem, you are to worship at this altar? Now you can see it's kind of twisted wisdom here, a view. First of all, remember throughout the Old Testament, we see these high places. And most of the kings of Israel never got rid of the kings of Israel, these high places. Even the good kings oftentimes it will say that they were good kings, but they never removed the high places. These high places are high elevated land or places, and they would erect pagan worship to them. And the thought is the higher up they get, the closer to the gods they would get. So now he's saying, if you're saying you trust in the Lord, so what is interesting here is that he is acknowledging the Lord, but notice what he says. Well, you remove the high places, the Lord's high places. No. Which is kind of funny, because if you really knew the Lord, you wouldn't even make this statement. Verse 8, now make a deal with my master, king of Assyria. I'll give you 2,000 horses if you're able to supply riders for them. Now this guy is really talking some big stuff here, isn't he? How then can you drive back a single officer amongst the weakest of my master's officers, and trust in Egypt for chariots and horsemen? Have I attacked this land to destroy it without the Lord's approval? The Lord said to me, attack this land and destroy it. He's lying on God. Okay. Even though God gave him the victory over Israel, he never told him, but he gave him the victory over Israel. Verse 11. The Elikim and Sheba and Joab said to Rashika, please speak to your servants in Arabic, since we understand it, and don't speak to us in Hebrew, within earshot of the people who are on the wall. Now they were trying to be slick, and they didn't want to have the people discouraged, right? Verse 12. Then Rashika replied, has my master sent me to speak these words to your master than to you, and not to the men who are sitting on the wall, who are destined with you to eat their own excrement and drink their own urine? Now this is oftentimes, we're going to see this in the book of Jeremiah, how food becomes so scarce when you're talking about war like that, because oftentimes they would surround the city and just sit and just let them starve to death. Then Rashika stood and called out loudly in Hebrew, listen to the words of the great king, the king of Assyria. This is what the king says. Don't let Hezekiah deceive you, for he cannot deliver you. Don't let Hezekiah persuade you to trust in the Lord, saying, the Lord will certainly deliver us. This city will not be handed over to the king of Assyria. Don't listen to Hezekiah, for this is what the king of Assyria says. Make peace with me and surrender to me. Then every one of you may eat from his own vine and his own fig tree, and drink water from his own cistern, until I come and take you away to a land like your own, a land of grain and new wine, a land of bread and vineyards. Now, the Assyrians were known to be very cruel and brutal. This is an empty promise. And notice even there he says, until I come to take you out of the land. In other words, you're going to be taken out of the land. You're going to be conquered. Verse 18, beware that Hezekiah doesn't mislead you by saying the Lord will deliver us. Has any one of the gods of the nations, has any one of the gods of the nations delivered his land from the power of the king of Assyria? Where are the gods of Hamath, Apad? Where are the gods of Sepharim? Have they delivered Samaria from my power? Now remember, Samaria was the capital of the northern kingdom, Israel. Who among all the gods of these lands ever delivered his land from my power? So will the Lord deliver Jerusalem. Again, he's lying on God. He's misleading the fact that God used him to conquer Israel. It says, but they kept silent. They did not say anything, but the king's command was, don't answer him. Then Eliakim, son of Hilkiah, who was in charge of the palace, Shebna, the court secretary, and Joab, son of Asaph, and the court historian, came to Hezekiah with their clothes torn and reported to him the words of Rashika. Now, chapter 37, when the king Hezekiah heard this report, he tore his clothes, put on sackcloth, and went to the Lord's temple. Then he sent Eliakim, who was in charge of the palace, Shebna, the court secretary, and the leading priests who were wearing sackcloth, to the prophet Isaiah, son of Amos. Now, this is very, I think, important when we read stuff like this. Because you see, to me, jackleg preachers that will take a verse like this and say, see, I'm a prophet today. Come to me, right? Always with money. Okay. But remember, Isaiah was established as a prophet. God had established him as a prophet to Israel. All right. Verse 3, they said to him, this is what Hezekiah said, today is a day of distress, rebuke, and disgrace, for the children have come to the point of birth, and there is no strength to deliver them. Perhaps Yahweh your God will hear all the words of the Rashika, whom his master, the king of Assyria, sent to mock the living God, and mock he did, and will rebuke him for the words that Yahweh your God has heard. Therefore offer prayer for the surviving remnant. Now he's talking. Remember, this is what Hezekiah sent to Isaiah. So the servants of King Hezekiah went to Isaiah and said to him, tell your master this. The Lord says, So the servants of King Hezekiah went to Isaiah, who said to them, I read that wrong, who said to them, tell your master this. The Lord says, don't be afraid because of the words you have heard, which the king of Assyria intended to blaspheme me with. I'm about to put a spirit in him, and he will hear a rumor, and return to his own land, where I will cause him to fall by the sword. Verse 8, and when Rashika heard that the king of Assyria had left Lachish, he returned and found him fighting with Libnah. The king had heard about Tirhakah, king of Cush. He had set out to fight against you. So when he heard this, he sent messengers to Hezekiah, saying, say this to Hezekiah, king of Judah, don't let your God, whom you trust, deceive you by promising that Jerusalem won't be handed over to the king of Assyria. Look, you have heard what the king of Assyria has done to all of the countries. They have completely destroyed them. Will you be rescued? Did the God of the nations that my predecessors destroyed rescue them? Golda, Haran, Respit, Zep, and the Indanites in Telshar. Where is the king of Hamath, the king of Arpad, and the cities of Sepharvaim? Sorry about me butchering these names. Hena and Iva. Hezekiah took the letter from the messengers, read it, and went up to the Lord's temple and spread it out before the Lord. Then Hezekiah prayed to the Lord, Lord of hosts, God of Israel, who is enthroned above the cherubims. You are God, you alone, all of the kingdoms of the earth. You made the heavens and the earth. Listen closely. Listen and hear. Open your eyes, Lord, and see. Hear all the words that Sennacherib has sent to mock the living God. Lord, it is true that the kings of Assyria have devastated all these countries and their lands. They have thrown their gods into the fire, for they were not gods, but made by human hands, wood and stone. So they have destroyed them. Now, Lord, our God, save us from the power, so that all the kingdom of the earth may know that you are the Lord, you alone. So again, you see this prayer. Now, I'll say this: whenever people humble themselves before God, God will be merciful. Okay, God will be merciful. Verse 21. Then Isaiah, son of Amos, sent a message to Hezekiah. The Lord, the God of Israel, says, because you have prayed to me about Sennacherib, king of Assyria, this is the word of the Lord has spoken against him. Virgin daughter Zion despises you and scorns you. Daughter Jerusalem shakes her head behind your back. Who is it you have mocked and blasphemed? Who have you raised your voice against and lifted your eyes in pride against the Holy One of Israel? You have mocked the Lord through your servants. You have said, with my many chariots I have gone up to the heights of the mountain, to the far recesses of Lebanon. I will cut its tallest cedars, its choicest cypress. I came to its distant heights and dense forests. I dug wells and drank water. I dried up all the streams of Egypt with the soles of my feet. Have you not heard? I designed it long ago. I planned it in days gone by. I have now brought it to pass. And you have crushed fortified cities into piles of rubble. Their inhabitants have become powerless, dismayed, and ashamed. They are plants of the field, tender grass, grass on the rooftop, blasted by the east wind. But I know you're sitting down. I know you're sitting down and you're going out and you're coming in, and you're raging against me. Because your ragings against me and your arrogance have reached my ears, I will put a hook in your nose and my bit in your mouth, and I will make you go back the way you came. And this will be a sign for you. This year you will eat what grows on its own, and in all the second year, what grows from that. For the third year, sow and reap, plant and harvest, and eat their fruit. The surviving remnant of the house of Judah will again take root downwards and bear fruit upwards. For the remnant will go out from Jerusalem, and the survivors from Mount Zion. The zeal of the Lord of hosts will accomplish this. Therefore, this is what the Lord says about the king of Assyria. He will not enter this city, or shoot an arrow there, or come before it with a shield, or build up an assault ramp against it. He will go back the way he came. Oh, okay. Where am I at here? Oh, I don't know why. Let me find my place again here. Okay, here we go. Verse 34, he would go back the way he came, and he would not enter the city. This is the Lord's declaration. I will defend this city and rescue it because of me and because of my servant David. Then the angel of the Lord went out and struck down 185,000 in the camp of the Assyrians. And when the people got up the next morning, they were all dead bodies. So Sennacherib, king of Assyria, broke camp and left. He returned home and lived in Nineveh. Now you remember Nineveh, just a few years, about 70 years earlier, God had spared Nineveh when they repented, but now they have changed. Then he says, and one day while he was worshiping in the temple of his god, Nashrach, his sons, Adramelech and Shazar, struck him down with the sword and escaped to the land of Ararat. Then his son Esarhaddon became king in his place. So fascinating story, um, where God says, "I will defend." Now, understand that God, in His sovereignty, decided to make a statement, um, and that's going to be a lot different. If you remember when we studied in chapter 35, where when Jesus reigned, all of the land would be subdued. He decided to do this instance to defend his name, his people, this time. So he sent this angel out, and they destroy in one night 185,000 soldiers. Wow, right? So a couple of things. How bad is this angel, right? So when we think about that, just think about how bad is this angel. And then, so anyway, a remarkable story. Now, again, it's something that God decided to do in His sovereignty. All right, guys, don't forget to like and share this video and subscribe to BP, the Bible Perspective. And as always, if you have a thought or comment, add it to the comment section below. All comments are welcome, and I'll see you in the next study.